thank you everyone again for attending today's webinar. These sessions again are created for you guys as an opportunity as our members to gain access to additional information and then best practices within public works. Today's session is a partnership with the NHVR, or National Heavy Vehicle Regulator, and Todd Wellard will be delivering the presentation today for the final series. So we'd like to also thank NHVR for joining us in delivering these sessions. So just a quick bit of introduction on Todd. So Todd commenced his career as a public health professional in the local government sector in Queensland and quickly developed an interest in business improvement initiatives. This led to working on a range of innovative programs of work in the government and regulatory space, including licensing system implementation, housing affordability, land use planning and development, and the flood mapping program following the Queensland floods in 2010 and 11. Todd joined NHVR in 2015 to assist the development and implementation of the NHVR portal, and now he's leading the strategic local government asset project for the NHVR, which is what his presentation is going to be on today. So what I'll do now is I'll just hand over to Todd. If you need to share your screen, do anything like that, and reach out if you need assistance.
Great, thanks for that intro, Aidan. Some things that I'd forgotten that I'd actually worked on there, but anyway, there you go. These things happen over time. And thank you to IPWI in New South Wales for the opportunity to come and I suppose partner on some pretty important initiatives that impact both of our groups, not only here at NHVR, but your membership as well. So thank you. And I'll what I might do, Tim, was there anything that you were going to cover off at the start, or? Okay, thanks, Tim. All right, well, I might kick into it. I'm just going to share my screen. I've just got a few slides here that that will take some of the focus off my talking, give you a bit of background about the project, and I suppose the relevance to you guys. All right, so just very quickly for those of you, and I know a number of councils are participating in the program in New South Wales, but just as a bit of background, I'll just tell you a little bit about what the project is about. So the Strategic Local Government Asset Assessment Project is a Australian government funded project. So effectively, the Australian government has given us a grant funding of about $8 million to basically assist road managers with the assessment of important infrastructure assets such as bridges and culverts. And I suppose the problem statement behind that funding is that, you know, road managers have got assets that they don't actually understand the capacity of these particular assets in relation to heavy vehicle access. And so there's a view that in some way that's restricting or impacting heavy vehicle access. So through this funding, if we can get a better understanding, hopefully we can better understand what the capacity of these assets is, and then where vehicles are, you know, able to go, which we'll talk a little bit about further on. So very quickly, again, just a bit of background, 4 key areas that we're focusing on. So improve access across the key routes on the local government network. That's the first thing. So we want to focus on those ones that are of significance in relation to heavy vehicles. Second thing is around, I suppose, trying to provide that connectivity between the local government and the state-run or jurisdictional network. So we want to look at routes that have got that connection and that importance. The third one, and obviously very, very important to you guys, is about building capacity of local government to conduct risk-based assessments and optimised network use. So clearly this is an area where, you know, in terms of heavy vehicle access, not a traditional role for local governments. Obviously, it's something that came in with the Heavy Vehicle National Law back in 2014. Prior to that, you know, local government didn't have a great role in this, certainly not a formalised role through it. So with the advent of this, I guess it's created some challenges around how we actually go about undertaking that function. And so there's a recognition here that we need to build some capacity through this program of work. And the last one is around providing asset information to operators for open data and transparency of access. So if we're doing these assessments and if we're getting a better understanding of assets, if we share that information with operators, then hopefully they can make better informed decisions around where their vehicles are, where they should apply for and where they should be taking those vehicles. So they're sort of the 4 key areas. Now, talk a little bit about, get into the, I suppose, the actual activity of what have we done. So this program started back in January of 2020. So we've been going for, you know, a bit over 18 months at this stage. And what we did was, again, for us at NHVR, a pretty new area to actually be looking at this. And so what we did was we got out and did a pilot. So we went straight, we engaged some external engineering firms to actually do assessments for us. We'd reached out to a number of councils to participate in that pilot. As you'll see from the map on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see there we've got about a dozen councils that participated in that process, and within New South Wales we actually had 3 councils, being Muswellbrook, Cessnock and Bega Valley, participating in that pilot. Now that helped inform us for the next round of assessment, round 1, which you'll see on the right hand side. And through round 1, we've done quite a few more assets. We're still actually completing that phase, and we're actually now extending round 1B through to the end of the year. So by the end of the year, we should have completed around about 400 assessments nationally. And more specifically, well, what does that mean for you guys in New South Wales? So effectively, as I said, from the pilot, 3 councils that we worked with there, and we did a total of 28 assets. So these are bridges and culverts, just to be clear. They're the assets that we were looking at. And then through round 1, another 53 assets, and working with 20 councils across New South Wales to undertake those assessments, again, using external engineering suppliers. So a bit in summary, I suppose, between the pilot, round 1, which you can see there, the second line of the table, about 200 assets that we're completing there, and round 1B, which we've just commenced. It's going to be somewhere around 100, maybe a few over 100 assets that we'll be doing, and we'll be working with around about a further, well, 20 councils. Now, obviously, I'm sure you can do the math there and you say that total in terms of the number of councils doesn't add up. That's because we've had councils participate in multiple rounds. So overall, we've worked with 74 councils. So we do these assessments. What does it mean? Here's just a couple of insights that we've done. We haven't had a lot of opportunity to actually analyse what the outcomes or what the results mean from these assessments, because we've just been so busy getting the assessments done. But there's a couple of examples, and the one on the left-hand side, the Greendale Bridge over the Broga River in Bega Valley. So you'll see there a bit about what sort of bridge that is, constructed in 1968, 5-span bridge, steel girders and a concrete deck. The assessment allowed us to get a better understanding of the capacity, and there are some dairy farms on that route. And the outcome there is that those double milk tankers are certainly within the carrying capacity of that particular asset. So they're now able to use that route, whereas previously the council wasn't sure whether it was suitable, so they were able to shorten that route. So that, in that case, that's a good outcome. The case study on the right there, you'll see Lilyvale Road Bridge. From the assessments we've done there, we've worked with the council to review their pre-approvals, and they've been able to add 5 routes to those pre-approvals. So the beauty of that is that we know that particular bridge can take certain vehicles. And so as a result of that, these applications now don't need to go to council. We've got their conditions. So when we get the application, we can just process those, put the conditions on for the council, and the council doesn't even have to touch it. So that's a pretty good outcome. We need to do a lot more work in that space. We haven't had the time because we've been spending our time trying to get the assessments done in what is a pretty short period of time. So one of the items, so I guess if we've done all that work, what are we doing with the information? And as you know, sharing, everybody wants data, everyone wants to analyse the data and see what it means. But the first thing was to capture it and I suppose share that. So what we've done within for those of you who are familiar with the NHVR portal, if you're performing that road manager function, you should be familiar with it. We've built a new layer in there. So all of these assessments that we do and all the assets will actually appear on this layer. So you can see there from that small map from the pilot, all those assets that we assessed, they've appeared there. And there's some, when you click on each of those, you hover over it, you get some basic information around those particular assets. So this is really the start of building that sort of asset information to help inform the permit process, if you like. You'll see there on the bottom right-hand side, I'm sure you can't see the detail, but that is the summary of the information that we've got from the assessment. So quite detailed in terms of the different vehicles we've looked at and the different, I suppose across the axle masses, what capacity that particular structure can take in regards to those particular vehicles on the assets. We're still doing some work around how we present that information because it is a lot. It is quite technical, and in terms of understanding that, there needs to be some, some fundamental training, which is something that we've also been doing in this space. So again, further that, what we've actually built into the portal, we've taken this one step further. So we've built this this functionality here, which is around basically allowing us to capture asset information. And the beauty of this is that all of the road managers, so if you guys work for a council in New South Wales and you've got access to the portal, you actually have access to this functionality. You can load into there, and you can do it in bulk or individually. You can load into there your bridge and culvert asset information into there. I guess the question is, why would you want to do that? You've already got asset management systems. We understand that. The whole point of this is around, if we've got the data, we can then help by using the system to inform any applications that you get. So we can't do that without the data. So the value proposition, I guess, for local government is that if we get the data in there, we can help you with your assessment process. Which leads me to the next slide, which is around really building capability to do rapid assessment. Okay, so what we've done is we've partnered with ARB, who I'm sure you're familiar with, the Australian Roads Research Board, and they've built this prototype rapid assessment tool. So we've only just taken that prototype on. We're going to be doing some work with a number of councils just to, I guess, test it out, try to break it, see how it works. And then once we've sort of got what we believe is a robust product, we want to look to build that into the NHVR portal. So that'll mean that everything is in the one place. And my reference before to the data, if we've got the asset data feeds this tool, and then we can actually undertake those assessments as applications come in. So if someone is applying for access on a particular route in your area, it's a vehicle perhaps that you haven't seen running there before, or maybe it's one you've been running and that's been running and you actually don't know because the asset's never been assessed. You should be able to use this tool then to do that assessment on the fly. So that's the sort of capability we're looking, well, we believe is critical and needed, particularly with changing vehicle configurations. There's more and more every day. So we believe we need a rapid assessment tool and build that capability in. So that's really the start of a bit of a journey in terms of getting this prototype. We've got a lot of work to do before we'll have that enabled within the portal, but certainly that's something that we see as critical for future capability for local government. So just watch this space on that particular one. All right, so that's kind of where we've got to. As I said, by the end of the year, we will have completed about 400 assessments. We are, in terms of the councils that we have worked with, the 74, where post the assessments, we're going to be meeting with the councils over the coming months to actually work through, and I suppose join the dots, if you like, between what the report says and what it means in the context of actually doing a heavy vehicle assessment. Because sometimes when you read these reports, it's not clear what it means in terms of access. So we want to try and work with councils to help that understanding about what it might mean for making those critical access decisions in the context of a risk framework. So that's an important piece of work we want to do. We've also delivered a webinar series, and I'm hoping that some of you had the opportunity to attend those recently. So we did 9 webinars, and those webinars were essentially introduction to bridge assessment. So we covered off a whole heap of material in that, some fundamentals around asset assessment and what the reports mean, all the way through to how you join that through to your access decision-making process. So that's a bit of a start to some further I suppose, training that we believe we need to do, and we're currently working through what that looks like. So that gives you a bit of a picture of where we got to. I suppose the next question is, where do we go from here? So you'll see on the screen there, we've got another $12.1 million in the current federal budget. So that's for another 3 years of funding to keep this work going. So that will be our focus towards the end of this year, leading into the calendar year of 2022 next year. So you know, the positive here is that the Australian government has been receptive to the work that we've done, and is looking at, you know, obviously supporting us ongoing, because the work isn't completed. In fact, in a lot of ways, the work we've done is really just a bit of an introduction, a bit of a discovery phase. We've learned a lot, and now we can start to be more strategic around how we go about delivering this program of work. So that's the good piece. So I'll just pause at that point. And I guess this is really where I sort of hand over to you guys to see what you want to know, or where you see the relevance of this project. But just some discussion points or things that are worth thinking about. So local or regional networks, how can we tap into regional groups to better target areas of need or benefit? So I think that's really important. You know, the work that we've done to date has really been working with individual councils. But if we want to leverage or maximise the benefits through looking at a network, we really need to work with regions. We really need to work with those organised groups. And I know there's a lot of, you know, technical groups. There's a lot of regional groups like ROCs and other groups there that we can work with. And I think that's really, really important, because a lot of these groups have done work to actually assist in that particular space. Optimising access. Now, this is really, really important point, because through these assessments, what we're doing is we're getting a better understanding of the asset capacity. And then what it's allowing us to do is work out, well, what are the most appropriate routes to be used? So this isn't about just saying we're opening up the network so that heavy vehicles can go everywhere. It's about appropriate access. It's about optimising heavy vehicle access on the network. And then I suppose importantly, it's about working out where your funding should go. You know, so over time, obviously working through that to better understand it. Strategic approach. Really, it's looking at developing the tools and undertaking the analysis to really look at a greater number of asset stocks. So the work we've done so far is only on a small number of assets. And I guess we need to look at how can we extend that, because we don't have the money and time to go out and assess every individual asset, and nor do we. But how do we apply the learnings from the assets we have assessed to similar structures? Now, obviously, you know, what do we mean by similar? There's a lot of analysis that needs to happen there. But we need to work through that, and that information is really important in terms of feeding into the fundamental understanding that we already have about our asset base. So again, national data. Now, I suppose you guys are well aware of this. You know, there is no national database for assets on our roads. So obviously each council has this information, and that's really important, but we don't have a collective view of that. And that's why the work we're doing in terms of the NHVR portal is to start to create some of that national view of the asset data. And that's really, really important, as I said, in terms of feeding into the process of analysis, undertaking further assessments, and doing that rapid assessment capability that I talked about earlier. So that's really, really important, that, you know, we're here in 2021 and we actually don't have a national picture of our road assets. So we certainly need to look to contribute to that in any way we can. Capability uplift for local government. So, certainly what we've found is that there's quite limited capability in terms of understanding or undertaking asset assessments, which makes sense because it's not been a role that councils have done traditionally. It's something that's normally outsourced. But even when those reports come in, understanding what it actually means and how you can apply it. So that's really important that we keep doing that work, and then we link it through to understanding how we apply it to those access requests that come along. And what else have I got here? Oh, and look, the key to this is around partnership. There's no way any of us can do this individually. We have to work together. Us working with not only IPWI in New South Wales, but nationally is really, really critical that we do that, and we partner and we suppose take advantage of that collective effort and resources that we have. So, for us talking to you guys here today, it's really, really important that, this is the start of something. And I hope that it's something we can, as I say, continue and work on actively together over the next 3 years of the program. So they're just I suppose, a few key thought starters there. And I suppose just in summary, in terms of if you're just interested in keeping track of what the program is doing, we do have a website here, which is on Engagement Hub. You'll see the link there on the right-hand side, nhvr.engagementhub.com.au. So effectively, we've set up this as a project website. If you haven't already registered, go in and have a look at the information. All the information about the project is there, but jump on and register so you can see the progress that we're making and also contribute to this. You'll also get access to the 9 webinars that we did recently, the Introduction to Bridge Assessment. You'll also get access to those. So I think that's a really, really good resource for you to get some fundamental understandings around how these assessments are done and how it links through to the access decision making. So look, that's probably about all I had at this stage, Aidan. So perhaps if you want to open it up for some questions, I'm happy to attempt to answer those.
I don't know if there's any question starters that Tim knows of. Anything you guys want to learn more about from us and the member base and all that too?
Yeah, I was just thinking, while people might be digesting all that information, because as you and I know, Todd, we me a little bit, you a lot, familiar with the information you've just imparted there, and just reinforcing the point that Todd made to you all while you're digesting that information, that the networks of local councils are really, really important. We know that they've got a really extensive history, some of those groups, those joint organisations that have had a legislative footing for the last couple of years. And even since we've started this is the third and final of the webinar series, I've had a couple of meetings with I think some people from Eurobadella are back on this morning. So I plugged into the Canberra Region Joint Organisation of Councils. So if any of you are part of those, I know Todd's plugged into quite a few of those already, but if you're in a group that we haven't plugged into for whatever reason, please get in touch. My brief here is I'm a little bit deep, but this wide across the information at the organisation. So depending where various projects are at the regulator on their status, Todd's is at a very interesting piece of progress at the moment in terms of the growth of it and the contribution it could make. So we're always really keen and impressed when councils, some of those ones that I've sat in when Todd's done this, they've had a whole lot of research work that we didn't even know about if we didn't have that meeting. Hey, Todd? Yep. I think so some of those ones are really good. So if you want to take forward this information to your joint organisation council colleagues and you're keen to dig deeper in your part of the world, please get in touch with either Todd or myself. That'd be great.
Yeah, and that's good to emphasise that point around the regions, Tim, because the Australian government, who is obviously funding this project, is very, very interested in getting those regional outcomes. that's their focus. They want to see the networks operating better. And fundamental to that is, understanding our assets. So capturing that data at a basic level, and then undertaking assessments where we can. Just on the data, I mean, probably one of the biggest challenges we've had in completing assessments is having access to the data about these assets. And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that. A lot of these bridges and culverts are, many decades old. Some of them are timber, as you know, but even some of the ones that are concrete and steel, it's very difficult to find design drawings. And in those situations, even though it might be a fairly critical asset, it's very difficult for us to do an assessment without that information, because we don't know the nature of the reinforcing. We don't know what's in the pylons that support that superstructure. So a lot of that information is really, really critical. In some cases, it's meant that the assessments we have done have got assumptions built into them that, to some extent limit the ability, the value of that particular assessment. So wherever we can, if we want to make this whole space easier, we have to get as much of that data as we possibly can. So that'll be a key focus. And look, this won't be, and I know councils get hit with this sort of stuff all the time, but going forward, there's going to be a lot of people, including us. If you want to participate in the project, we're going to be asking you for that information up front. And if you don't have it, then it's very difficult. Another part of that is around conducting inspections on assets. So we've even found there in that regard that a lot of councils haven't had current inspection reports that they're able to provide to us. And, that's a real concern. Some of these assets are quite critical, and yet they haven't been inspected for a number of years. We had one that we looked at that the last inspection had been done over 8 years ago. And this was quite a significant structure. It was over 8 years ago, and the report had actually pointed to when the next inspection should be done, which was about October last year, and that inspection still hasn't been done. So, in terms of an engineer who might be looking to do an assessment of that asset, how do they do it accurately without knowing what the condition of that asset is? So that all of that information is really, really crucial in order to get value out of this work. I guess we just can't emphasize that enough. Hi, Vikram, can we get certified training in M7 for bridge assessment? Everybody wants freebies, don't they? Everybody wants a freebie. But look, it's a fair question. One of the things we're looking at, as I said, we pulled together that introduction to bridge assessment webinar series, so 9 webinars, and it really was just just an intro. It really was just looking at some of the concepts. There are full courses that we know are available, and we're currently working through how we can actually package up and deliver that sort of training. And obviously we have to be mindful of the objectives that the Commonwealth is wanting us to meet. So, yes, it falls within the, capability uplift, I suppose, part of the program. But we just have to look at how we can actually go about, particularly in this time where we've got all these restrictions because of COVID. We can't have people, flying around the place. So how do we look at delivering that in a value-added way online? I don't think someone wants to sit in one of these meetings for 8 hours. So we have to look at how we can package that up and how we can cost that to provide that service. But certainly it's something we're looking at. So what do we got? Another one here from Nathan. Hi, this is a great program. Excellent. I'm glad you think so, Nathan. If we as a council are interested in applying for future rounds, is it most appropriate to complete the EOI form online? What information would NHVR require in an EOI? Yep, so certainly we've got that expression of interest form, as you highlight, on our engagement site. So good one for getting on there, Nathan. That's great. Yes, you can do that. As I said, what we are looking to do, because of the objectives that the Commonwealth is wanting us to meet, we're trying to shift our focus from just, I guess, if I can use a loose term, a scattergun approach, where we just nominate and we'll pick some, right? I mean, there's more of a process to it than that, but we need to look at getting network outcomes. So what we'd be looking is, yes, Nathan, your council, but what we want to do as well is look at the councils around you. And what I've noticed from working with, and Tim would have seen this as well, from working with a lot of the regional groups, is that these regional groups do a lot of great work around their strategies of how they manage, the road network and a whole bunch of other things strategically, plans that go over the next 10 or 20 years. What I want to do is tap into that, because that's crucial. So we want to look at where does the region see that the network is going to be in the future, and therefore where should we focus our efforts in terms of these assessments? Because the reality is, with 20,000 or so bridges on the local government network, we are not going to assess every bridge.
There's another one just come up there, Todd. Not sure if you can see that from Stephen.
Yep, Stephen. Yep.
Excellent.
Yes.
Rail
Rail infrastructure. Yeah, well, okay, so just for those who can't see it, as NHVR approached the rail infrastructure managers in each state to get assessments of their roads over rail bridges. These bridges make up the asset of the rail infrastructure manager. Yeah, so I suppose the point there, and it's part of a bigger picture, in that local government aren't the only road owners. Rail aren't the only road owners. The state jurisdictions aren't the only ones as well. And we know as well, we've got utilities, we've got the Murrumbidgee irrigation scheme owns bridges. I think there's, and I'm not sure if the relevant person is online, but there's one in Western New South Wales where there's a bridge right in the middle of town. And excuse my vague description here, but it's owned by, I believe, an irrigation scheme, and the council is constantly asking. Sorry, what was that?
In Griffith, I think.
Yeah, I think it's Griffith or Leeton. I wasn't sure, but I think you're right. And council gets a lot of inquiries about this, but it's owned by the irrigation scheme, and the request to have that bridge assessed has fallen on deaf ears, from what I understand. So that is impacting the council. So look, your point is valid. There is a much bigger group here to look at. Have we actually, to answer your question, no, we haven't. We're well aware of it. We have done work in the past with John Holland in New South Wales around some of this, but it's not something that's actively being looked at by the project. It's not part of our scope that the Commonwealth has set. Having said that, we are providing that contextual picture back to the Commonwealth. No easy answer to that one. So, I mean, I guess the flip side of this that you can look at is the beauty of this, that this money is dedicated to local government infrastructure. That's the positive. So we're not saying this is for everyone, so you don't have to compete with that. This is purely for local government. So focus on that, get some results. And when we look at the network, it may well be that some of those things, some of those assets that are owned by other road managers, asset owners, start to become more prominent, or perhaps stand out in terms of restricting or allowing some of that access. Yeah, thought it would be an onion with many rings. You're exactly right, Stephen. You bet it is. So yeah, look, we in the work that we've done so far, we've literally pulled back the covers, and we've learned a lot, and we've gone, wow, where do we go from here? And we know that we're going to have to adjust our program of work beyond just going out and, as I say, councils just nominating an asset and us getting someone to come out and do it. We've got to be more strategic, and that capability around rapid assessment is really, really important. We're also going to do a lot of analysis around looking at the bridge families. So we want to understand, when we look at our bridge stock, and this is why the data is really important, what are the various bridge families and what percentage of the stock makes those up, and how does that relate to the key freight routes on our local government network? So all that analysis is going to be critical going forward. And as I say, we're going to be needing that data to do that analysis in order to help local government better understand those assets and what they can do in terms of making those access decisions. I guess what I'd be keen to do is, as I said before, partnerships are key to getting some progress here. And, it's really important that while we've got a program of work, I want to hear what, you guys as individuals, but also as members of a key, peak body, how this aligns to the work or the objectives that you guys are trying to achieve. So I suppose, Aidan, for you and for your organisation, where does this fit? What does it mean? How can we work together in order to achieve, sort of compatible outcomes, I guess? That's what I'll be really looking to do. Probably worth noting in that regard, we've actually been working very closely with IPWIA Queensland during this program. And they've actually provided a lot of, through, I'm sure a number of you know of Dr. Neil Lake. Neil is certainly an expert within this space. And we have worked closely with IPWIA Queensland to draw on Neil's experience and knowledge to deliver this program of work, to provide governance over the assessments that are being undertaken, but also help us develop an assessment framework beyond what the Australian standard currently describes in order to help local government. So we've done a lot of that work, and as I say, with the input from IPWIA Queensland, which is really, a lot of that was about sort of, I suppose, dipping the toe in the water to go, well, how can we work together? And I think we've got some understanding of that here in Queensland, but what does it look like in a New South Wales, South Australia national context? That's something we don't yet know and something we're very keen to leverage. So as I say, a big reason why we've been working with IPWIA Queensland is because Dr. Neil Lake is there. He used to be with ARB. He's done a lot of work. So a lot of I'm sure many of you are familiar with a lot of the publications he's done through Austroads, through ARB. His credentials are there for everyone to see. And this is a space as well, I suppose, and Neil highlights that, where these skills aren't readily available and highly, highly developed across Australia. It's quite a limited pool of people who've got a lot of experience and understanding and able to use engineering judgment, which I think is the real key here. Because if you work from the Australian standard and just apply what the Australian standard says, sure, you can complete an assessment, but it's probably going to be conservative and it potentially won't add a great deal of value. It won't provide a lot of that insight that local government road managers are seeking. So hence we've tried to really sort of, I guess, push the boundaries of that and try and get some better insights and outcomes through that process. So yeah, look, working with Neil has been really, really beneficial for the program. But again, as I say, I'd like to see how we can work with IPWIA in New South Wales as well.
Sort of a hook back to the subject matter of the first of these series, which was about those Power BI reports. And I know from the names on the screen, a number of you have participated in the previous two as well. So I thank you for that, as well as anyone who was just able to make today. But you might recall that one of the views on the permit information is of both the average and the maximum length, width, height and mass that have gone over any specific route in your local area. So while you might not have had, to pick up on Todd's point that he just made then, while you might not have had the absolute technical information at your fingertips, there is some information that can then be put beside what you have approved, and on the back of having approved that, you will know what impact, if any, that had on those kind of structures there. So having that information at your fingertips to tie that together with the subjects in the previous webinar series that we've had this month, that's one way. And then the middle webinar series with Phil last week with the digital mapping, in the future, you'll have a great capacity to record a lot of that information yourself on the way to go mapping system. So if we spin the clock forward 12 months and you've got familiar with that information in the portal, the new mapping system and the progress with the project that Todd's steering, we'll be in a pretty good place compared to where we are now, and certainly where asset knowledge was 3 or 4 years ago, don't you think?
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right, Tim. And our program is working very closely with the NHVR spatial program, Phil's team. really, really critical. I think we're providing some sort of seed data and requirements around what we might need into the future. Where we'd like to get to, as you say, is having that, a comprehensive set of data in there, not only about road assets, but bridges and culverts, but other things as well, because that's going to be really important for actually streamlining the assessment process. And I guess what we're looking at here is, what we're not doing is saying, well, we can just automate all of this. What we're saying is we want to streamline it where somebody looking at that is actually not adding any value. So where we can, we want to fundamentally try and streamline that. You'll always get those cases, and maybe it's the classic 80-20 rule that people talk about. You'll always get those cases where you go, this is an unusual vehicle movement, right? This is an oversized, overmass vehicle. It's a wind turbine, or it's something like that, and we know these projects are going on, or it's some equipment that's got to go up to a mine. So it's not your usual movement. That's when automation doesn't help. That's when you need human input, right? So what we'd like to do is shift that balance, because there's a lot of applications that we're working with at the moment where they're for vehicles that have travelled previously, and you're still having to spend time on it, even though you know you're going to approve it, for example, right? So what we want to try and do is get those, streamlined as much as possible, so that then when those other, we've all got other work to do, right? You guys have got more to do than just do heavy vehicle assessments. Okay, it's probably a small part of your work. So all I want to do is try and reduce that effort where it's appropriate. But when you get those exception applications come in, as the examples I just gave, that you can then have the time to dedicate to working on that, working with the operator, and maybe looking at some modelling that you might need to do around those particular assets. But the beauty of this as well is that with the work we're doing, you'll be able to use that information to inform that assessment anyway. So, I think that's really important that we build it, because if you look at the figures around the heavy vehicle freight task, it's going to double by 2030 and it's going to triple by 2050. So think about that. And the vehicles that you're seeing out there at the moment, I think in our portal, I think we've got over 1 million different configurations that have been applied for throughout since NHVR has existed. So it's 1 million already. How many more are there going to be, particularly with the growth of PBS? It's huge. So we're going to get so many more. This isn't going to go away. It's only going to get bigger. So we have to look at ways of how we can streamline this process going forward. The data, once again, I know we keep saying it, but the data is absolutely fundamental to that streamlining.
But I'll give it over just quickly to Tim to hand over a few comments as well.
Thanks very much, Aidan. And look, we when Aidan and I had a chat 4 weeks ago, the upside of there's not a lot of upsides with the situation that you're in New South Wales at the moment that prevents us from doing this face to face. But one upside is we could pull these things together pretty quickly. And I'd really like to thank IPWEA for their enthusiasm in embracing this, and your enthusiasm in participating. So it's a model that works pretty well. We're keen to do that again at some time in the future. And yeah, look, really emphasise if you have an idea, if you have a question, no question is a silly question, especially in these times. And please get in touch with either myself, Todd or Phil about the specialists sessions that we did. But if you're not sure who to talk to, then please contact me in the first instance. And I know Aidan sent out my details for the previous ones, and he's going to do that again. So yeah, look, tell your colleagues, please get in touch. We'd like to keep the momentum of these discussions going. So thanks again to IPWEA, New South Wales and ACT for partnering with us in these sessions. Thanks, Aidan.
Thanks, Tim. But look, that's it for today's session. For your participation, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, Aidan. Thanks, everyone.